welcome everybody. And so let you know if many of you have been coming weekly. And if you've missed any of the, I don't know, this might be our 13th or 14th week of the Thursday night Refuge Recovery talks and book study. And so if you've missed any, they're all recorded on the Refuge Recovery World Services YouTube channel. So you can go back and watch those and catch up. And we have completed the first section of the book, the basic text of Refuge Recovery, the 4 truths, the Eightfold Path, and the couple of chapters of commentary on living this and practicing it and applying it to all aspects of our lives and the process of healing and recovering from addiction and the Buddhists' promise of awakening, of liberation that comes through following these 4 truths and developing these 8 aspects of the Eightfold Path. And we're going to move on from the first section of the theory and application to the meditation practices. And every week, until we complete them, we will go through the guided meditations that we do in our Refuge Recovery meetings that are peer-led, where people share the instructions, and we have that in every Refuge meeting. And I will discuss a little bit, share some of my thoughts and experience with each meditation. And then I will share directly out of the book what the meditation instructions are and have an opportunity to practice together and then have some discussion about the meditation instructions. And I hope that will be helpful if anybody has any questions about how do we do this, or questions about how to work with some of the experiences that come up while you're meditating. The first meditation, and where we'll start today, is the mindfulness. It's the first foundation of mindfulness, and it's mindfulness of breathing. And this is just the initial meditation instruction. And the reason that it's the first one is that although we know that the Eightfold Path isn't necessarily practiced in order, the same goes true for mindfulness. It's not, even though there's a list of 4 foundations of mindfulness, it's not necessarily how it's always practiced. You might start with the 3rd foundation. You might start observing your mind. Although traditionally it's believed that the gradual instruction of beginning with mindfulness of the breath and the body will develop the foundation to allow us to open to investigating the feeling tone in the 2nd foundation and the mind states, mental objects in the 3rd foundation and 4th foundation. So the traditional way to start is mindfulness of the breath. When the Buddha taught the 4 foundations of mindfulness, he said something like, one who's interested in developing this finds a place to sit, crosses their legs, sits upright, and establishes mindfulness in the body. And breathing in, one knows I breathe in, and breathing out, one knows I breathe out. So that's the first meditation instruction. First, there's something about posture. And he does say, sitting down in an upright posture and crossing the legs. Again, he's teaching that in a context where people are maybe outside. The Buddha was houseless, homeless, and people weren't sitting around on chairs. People were sitting on the ground. And if you're sitting on the ground, it's a good thing to do to cross your legs, sit upright, create a kind of tripod with the crossed legs, what they call Indian style or lotus, half lotus. So my own feeling is that posture is not that important. What's more important than the posture is the quality of attention that we bring. So we can do this But there is something about sitting up, not just lounging, but to take an upright posture can increase energy and attention in the body. And of course, our bodies get uncomfortable when we sit still, and that's absolutely okay. And if anything, actually, it's an opportunity. Part of what we're doing, a huge part of what we're doing in meditation and in Refuge Recovery, meditation interventions for addiction and for relapse, is learning to be uncomfortable. So sitting still gives us the opportunity to develop more and more tolerance for discomfort. And in that way, it's important to learn to be uncomfortable. And meditation isn't about feeling good all of the time. It's about increasing skills, ultimately increasing compassion and wisdom. So briefly, I'll share that my introduction to meditation, as I think a lot of people's is, was through mindfulness of the breath, this first aspect of the first foundation. A little over 32 years ago, sitting in juvenile hall, addicted, and starting to meditate, making the decision that I want to try to get sober. I want to try to get clean. I want to do something about this addiction that has been ruling my life for years now. And as I sat in my jail cell and brought my attention to my breath and breathing in, trying to feel the breath, I realized quite quickly that one of the functions was there's relief in ignoring the mind and paying attention to the body. At that time, I was, as I said, I was incarcerated, but I was safe. I was in a cell. I had food, I had clothing, I had, I didn't have freedom, but I had the kind of necessary requisites in that moment. And all of my suffering was about the past and the future. And that experience of sitting there and bringing my attention, mindfulness, to the breath gave me a tiny bit of relief from the suffering that my mind was creating about the past and the future. And I got the practical, applicable experience of, oh, this works a little bit. It feels good to disengage from the thinking mind and be in the body, even if it's just for half a breath. There's something practical here. There's something that works. I didn't know that it was even possible to ignore my mind. I had been obeying my mind my whole life. And my mind told me to drink and use and steal and fight. And I did what my mind told me to most of the time. And then I was sitting here in the first early meditation experience, and my mind was telling me to think about the future and to, think about the past. And I saw for the first time in my life, it's possible to disobey our own minds, that we don't have to stay identified with what the mind is telling us to do, that we can bring our attention back to the body, back to the breath. And I believe that this is the spirit and one of the practical ways that the first part of the first foundation helps us start to break our addiction to obeying our minds and being identified with our minds. First, we learn to ignore the mind and feel the breath and feel the body. Of course, the Buddha's instructions expand pretty quickly to say, now, no, don't just ignore your mind forever. That's also a dead end. It's a good foundation in the beginning, but eventually we need to have an awareness and a tolerance and a relationship with our own thoughts and emotions. And as we open to the second and third foundations of mindfulness, it's important to be inclusive of the whole human experience. But we start by just the breath, everything else in the background. Returning to the breath over and over, concentrating, anchoring, returning to breathing in, breathing out. Thoughts are arising and passing in the background, return to the breath. Although it's 32 years later, it's still a core part of my practice. I still begin most of my meditation sessions by bringing my attention into my body, feeling the breath. I expand more quickly these days to a more inclusive, embodied awareness, mindfulness practice. But there's still that foundation. Am I breathing in? Am I breathing out? Hope that's useful for you. Welcome. And find a way to sit that's upright and relaxed. And I will share this meditation instruction with you. You don't need to read along. You can just listen and meditate. Receive the instructions. Find a comfortable way to sit. Adjust your posture so that your spine is erect without being rigid or stiff. Allow the rest of your body to be relaxed around the upright spine. Rest your hands in your lap or on your legs. Allow your eyes to be gently closed. Bring full attention to the physical sensations of sitting still. Allow your breathing to be natural. Bring attention to your head. Release any tension in your face. Soften the eyes and relax the jaw. Scanning the body slowly downward. Relax the neck and shoulders. Feeling the rise and fall of the chest and abdomen with each breath. Soften the belly with each exhalation. Bring the attention all the way down through the body to the places of contact with a chair or cushion. Allow your body to be supported by the seat you're on. Feel the pressure and density of the relaxed, upright body sitting. Bring your full attention to the present time experience. Acknowledge the full range of phenomena that are happening in the moment. Thinking is happening. Hearing is happening. Seeing, even with the eyes closed. Tasting, smelling. Physical and emotional sensations are all present. Allowing all the experiences to be as they are. Redirect your attention to the sensations of the breath. Let the other sense experiences fall to the background as you bring the awareness of breathing to the foreground. Take a few moments to investigate where you feel the breath most easily. Usually either at the base of the nostrils or the rising and falling of the abdomen. Find the place where you feel the breath coming and going and use that as the point of focus. It is best to choose one place and stick with it. Don't jump back and forth between nose and belly. It is not necessary to follow the breath in and out. Breathing in. Know that you are breathing in. Breathing out. Know that you are breathing out. A simple way to stay focused is by quietly acknowledging in your mind in on the inhalation and out on the exhalation. If you're paying attention at the nostrils, or rising and falling, if you're paying attention at the abdomen. Of course, you will quickly realize that your attention will not stay with the breath. The attention will be drawn back into thinking over and over. In the beginning, the practice of meditation is often just the practice of training the attention to return to the breath. Each time the attention wanders back to the thinking aspect of the mind, gently redirect it back to the breath. This natural process of training the mind is the essence of meditation. It is important to understand that this will happen over and over. It doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong or that you can't meditate. It just means that you, like all people, are so used to thinking about things rather than feeling them that the attention is naturally drawn into thinking again and again. Bring the attention back to the simple experience of the breath over and over. Breathing in, know that the breath is coming into the body. Breathing out, know that the breath is leaving the body. Each time the attention wanders into thinking or to another sense experience, acknowledge that that has happened, noting the thinking or hearing or seeing. And then again, return the attention to the awareness of the breath. While you are training the mind in present time awareness of the breath, with the mind's almost constant wandering and returning, it is important to bring a quality of kindness and understanding to the practice. Try to be friendly towards your experience. Of course, the attention wanders. Try not to take it personally. It's not your fault. That's just what the untrained mind does. It will take some time and perseverance to train the attention to stay with the chosen object of awareness. It is necessary to be patient and kind to yourself in the process. Easier said than done, I know. But when you get caught judging yourself, being too critical, or doubting the process, attempt to bring friendliness to your relationship to the thoughts. And then simply redirect the attention back to the breath. When you're ready, you can allow your eyes to open. Coming to the end of the formal mindfulness of the breath instructions. But just as a reminder that mindfulness continues as we open our eyes and we move and we stretch, and mindfulness in this way is being present, what we call non-judgmental present time awareness. And at the end of this meditation instruction, there's a refrain where the Buddha says, now bring this quality of presence, mindfulness, to every activity of your life. When you're walking, know that you're walking. Standing, know that you're standing. Laying down, know that you're laying down. And all of the activities, whether it's driving or going to the bathroom or eating, or every activity as an opportunity for present time awareness, of not being lost with the thoughts of the future or thoughts of the past, to be, as the man said, to be here now, to be present with what is. And we do that by this formal training. We use the breath as the anchor, coming back over and over to the simple sensory experience of the breath. I think that one of the reasons I'm open to questions, but I think that one of the reasons that we use the breath is that it's always happening. If you're alive, we're always breathing in or breathing out. And so it's this simple, reliable refuge. It's a reliable, you can always choose to just check in. Am I breathing in or out? What's that feel like? What are the sensations associated with this exhale or this inhale? And it can just help that disengagement from the mind back to the body, back to the present. It's the first instruction. And as I said, week by week, we'll go through each instruction of the book. But any discussion about these instructions? Yes, Vanessa, I will unmute you.
I could unmute myself.
Go for it.
Hi. So when to know what to use, because it's so nice to ignore the mind. It's so nice to have the distraction of the breath. But when is it appropriate? When is it appropriate to just focus on your breath? And when is it appropriate because it's kind of addictive. Sitting there and breathing. And I even find when I do the mindfulness of the mind, I end up falling into mindfulness of the breath.
Yeah. Just
because it's so anchoring and I want that feeling.
Such a good and important question. And the answer is, it depends. Mm-hmm. It depends on a lot of factors. It depends on where you're at. If you're brand new to meditation practice, you can keep coming back to your breath and get addicted to it and learn to ignore your mind, and fine. It's a really healthy foundation to concentrate if you're new. And by new, I mean your first year or so of practice, let's say. Now, in Refuge, we say forgiveness. Don't forget forgiveness. And we say, right in the beginning, alternate. Do forgiveness practice because of exactly what you're asking, Vanessa, which is actually, I like the avoidance that the breath gives me. And there's something wonderful about that. It's kind of similar to the kind of avoidance that we get when we're being of service to someone else. It feels good to get out of our selfish, self-centered, suffering-making minds and come into the body, or to focus on helping someone else. It's good. It's good relief. But in the long run, it can become avoidance of what actually needs to be healed, what needs to be forgiven, what needs to be learned to loved, what needs to be met with compassion. So alternating. Now for you, you're an old timer. So
I was just asking the question broadly.
yeah, but I'm going to answer it specifically for you. So I'm going to give you this. I'm going to give you this, and this is why I said it depends. For you, you can allow yourself like 10 minutes of breath practice, and then you got to push yourself off it. First 10 minutes, you can stabilize. Yes, breath, breath, breath. But then you got to expand. Second foundation, third foundation, switch to forgiveness, switch to loving kindness, break. First of all, we have to break our addiction to our own minds. The breath helps us do that. Then we have to break our addiction to avoiding by hanging out in the pleasant experience of the breath. So, you're at a place, and this is why it depends. Many people get stuck. Many meditators get stuck on these initial instructions because they feel good. And, the Buddha was over and over warning people about the seductive and addictive nature of concentration meditations, which is technically what this is. When you're ignoring and avoiding and concentrating, it's a useful tool if then expanded to the full heart, mind, body reality. It's not a useful tool if we just stay in the avoidance technique. So for you, 10 minutes and then expand.
Well, I've still been doing the every other day, like metta for self, and then the mindfulness of mind. But I don't even give myself 10 minutes in the beginning anymore because it's too delicious. But like I find that I use that now as my crutch, the mindfulness of mind. Like when I'm zoning out, like it's like my mind found a loophole. Like, oh, I'm still meditating, So something to work on.
I also feel like you'll come to a place where there's a sense of I'm here, I'm aware of my body, I'm aware the breath is coming and going, and I'm also aware that thoughts are arising and passing. If you're so kind of focused on the mind that you completely lose your body, you're either very, very concentrated, or maybe you've floated off with the thought. So there's a way you've heard me, and we'll get there when I get here in the instruction, but you've heard me probably give this instruction of watching the mind is like sitting next to the railroad tracks, and you're watching the train of thoughts go by. So that's where like a light touch on breath, body, maybe how your hands are resting, so that you don't get lost in the thoughts, so you don't go train hopping, as we say.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Michael.
Thanks, Noah. I like during the meditation when you say be kind and patient and bring an attitude of friendliness to mindfulness of breath. Because I, can, like a lot of addicts and alcoholics, I can be like ruthless on myself and beat myself up with breath, and like I'll take 4 deep breaths before I start, and holding it for 2 seconds, doing 6 seconds of slow release. And I think when you in the meditation, when you said that, it kind of just lets me let go and stay in the breath and not have like a expectation on how something should go. Like just let expectations go. Like being kind and compassionate is so counterintuitive. I mean, I've been doing it and I feel like it's been working, but sometimes I feel like I can default back to being tough on myself. But it was really good during the meditation when you said, just be kind, be patient, have an attitude of friendliness towards it. And then like I just felt the default mechanisms and the judging mind like dissipate and go away. And be here, like you said, be here now. Like it brought me right back to be like easy and just be kind, patient, have an attitude of friendliness. And it was a good meditation, and I was able to slow the racing thoughts down. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to see you, and I'm glad that it's landing in a good way for you. And this is so important. and so hard, like you said, kind of counterintuitive. And so many of us meditators end up using meditation as another way to kind of judge ourselves, and the judging mind and the ego just kind of jump in there and criticize, and you're not even good at meditation, and you can't even sit still, or and so this attitude of friendliness, this attitude of patience and kindness, even towards that aspect of the mind that criticizes and judges and complains. So developing this is so key in order for mindfulness to, because mindfulness is supposed to be non-judgmental, present time awareness. And I like to add this friendly present time awareness. Now, there is some question about how much of this is the human condition and how much of this is our conditioning. And there's something about growing up in West, maybe this is true in a lot of societies, but I want to tell this story, and I might get some shit for it, but I'm going to tell it anyways. That at one point, the Dalai Lama asked a whole bunch of Western teachers, European and North American meditation Buddhist teachers, what are the students in the West suffering from the most? What's the most common kind of thing? And the teachers huddled, and they got together, and they came back to the Dalai Lama. It was at like a teacher meeting with the Dalai Lama in India, and some of my teachers were there, and they came back and they said, this kind of self-hatred, this low self-esteem, feeling of unworthiness, basically the judging mind on full tilt. And they went to the Dalai Lama, and they had to kind of go back and forth with the Dalai Lama and the translator to even explain to him what self-hatred is. And he went back and forth, and he said, we don't even really have a term for this in Tibet. This is kind of a Western phenomena on some level or another. Now, I don't think that that's completely true, and I'm sure we could find lots of people throughout the world, not just Western, with low self-esteem. But part of it is the difference between being raised in a religious, spiritual, in a Buddhist context, where you're told from birth you have the potential to be enlightened, compassion is your, part of your nature, loving kindness is underneath, it all, this sort of like, the difference between that and our Judeo-Christian conditioning that says you're born into sin, you're basically, you're kind of fucked from birth, is sort of what we're told, and makes it, then we internalize all of that conditioning, and then we sit here in meditation, and it's hard to be kind to ourselves. We don't feel worthy of kindness. He said we don't run into this that much in his culture, anyways. He said, well, our people suffer in lots of different ways too, but not from this inability to be kind to oneself. So I just feel like that's important. It's one of the reasons why I put that instruction in, always am encouraging. We have to train our minds to be kind, to be friendly, to be forgiving, to be compassionate, even when we're doing something as simple as paying attention to the breath. Because your mind will use it as another way to judge. So I'm glad that it resonated with you, and I hope that story makes sense to some people.
Hello, I just wanted to say how grateful I am to be here. I have not been here before. I'm in Australia, and I'm a student of Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh. And last week, I gave a Dharma talk on right action. And in my talk, I spoke about my lack of right action. I have a son who's an addict. And I just spoke a little bit about how I got caught up in my own cravings, wanting him to be okay, and my delusion, thinking he actually was okay, and the problems that resulted in. But one of the people who were listening to the talk actually sent me this link, and I'm so grateful. And I've just enjoyed the talk so much. And Noah, your sharing is so deep, and I'm very grateful to be here. And my son Makoto, his fiance, is also tuned in here from Australia, and his sponsor. So we're all here and just so grateful that we could tune in. So thank you so much.
Welcome. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad that you were here. Thich Nhat Hanh has also been a very influential teacher in my life for many years, 25, 30 years. And I've sat retreats with him, and I feel very inspired, by Tay's teachings. And there's Refuge in down under in Australia. So right now we're all online everywhere, but I hope that your son does, if he's willing, and to find some meetings. Right now it's mostly online resources, but we are a Buddhist-based program for all of these people that are tuned in here, all doing the meditation-based solution.
Yes, thank you. And he would have tuned in this morning, but he's gone back to school, and he's at school today, so he couldn't tune in. But when he gets a chance, I know he will.
Great.
Thank you.
Lots of meetings available. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, from Australia. I mean, Dyer is my mother-in-law, so I think I was just about to type you a message, Noah, and say, I'm not too sure if this is relevant, and I guess that's my own self-doubt eking out. And I think my question to you was going to be, how does one sort of allow themselves the time to have these moments and come to these places and these teachings when we're so inclined with avoidance, and helping others is our way of, and our tool to avoid ourselves. I mean, Makoto and I have been through a lot together in the last nearly a year. I think it's like 8 or 9 months. So I feel like in some ways I've really put myself on the back burner to really, help and guide in that way, but I'm losing myself a lot. And I think my frustrations and my projections are now slowly coming out. So yes, back to my question is, how does one, come in peace, with the fact that we're allowed to have this time for ourselves and all of that. So, yeah.
I don't really know. I mean, thank you and welcome. And, Refuge Recovery is, all are welcome to Refuge, and, addiction in one's family or in one's relationship, of course, affects us. And then also there's many people in Refuge Recovery that don't have substance abuse issues, but process addictions. And sometimes it's people that we become addicted to. That's part of what we're addressing as well. And, this is such a good and important question. Like, how do we get the motivation and to self-care and to do our practice? And I don't have a good answer for that. Like, usually we have to really hit some dead ends and bang up, hit the wall a bit with seeing that trying to take care of everyone else creates a lot of suffering for us. And that, there's that simple, airplane analogy, which is put on your own mask in case of emergency, put on your own mask first before helping others. And it's totally counter, is like, no way, I'm going to help my kids first. And, and then you get it, like, unless I pass out because I don't have any oxygen, and then I can't help my kids or anybody else around me.
Yeah.
So that's the, we have to kind of get our mind around, we can't give away what we don't have. We have to take care of ourselves in order to truly be of service, in order to truly create the positive change we want to see on this planet. It has to come from a place of genuine internal compassion, genuine internal recovery, or whatever we want to call it. But I don't know how to, we can't talk anybody into that. Everybody has to come to that for themselves. So simply, you know, for you, something happened in your relationship and something happened in your meditation just now where you got it. You're like, I need to do this for me, not for my boyfriend, not for, I need to do this for myself. And so then just remember that and commit, and, you know, go with your boyfriend's mom and go sit at the Sangha and tune in and develop a practice, you know. The Dharma, you know, like this Refuge Recovery conversation is about recovering from addiction, but of course we're just using the Buddha's Four Noble Truths and Eightfold Path, which is for everyone, you know, whether you're an addict or not. This is the path to end suffering in the human experience. So welcome, and
Yeah.
I'm glad you dropped in with us tonight.
Thank you, and I should really say that I am grateful. Thank you, Daya, for sharing and continually sharing, and thank you, Noah, and everyone. Thanks. It's great, really lovely. So.
Welcome. Just a few minutes left. As you reflect on this first meditation, is there anybody that has a question, or like the kind of any part of it that doesn't make sense to anybody, where you're like, how do I do that? Or how does that make sense? Is it anybody that has a question about the sort of practical application?
May I ask a question?
Yeah, Maz, go ahead.
Okay. If someone has I don't know if can you hear me okay?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Is it Jordan? Yeah, Jordan.
Yes.
Yeah.
If anyone is facing a major life event due to actions that were taken during addiction and behaviors that were committed. So I'm facing legal prosecution. So there's a very big chance I will be going to jail.
Yep.
And it may be for some time. So how would one apply? I'm hoping not to, but I'm preparing to go to jail, and I need to kind of have an inventory of meditation. And how does one do that in can be a very tumultuous environment, very unusual and alien to me.
Right.
While I was incarcerated briefly, before I was bailed, and it's an echoey place. It's a lot of yelling. There's a lot of clanking and noise, and I know that's somewhat mindful, but how does one kind of stay centered and deal with that? I'm sorry if that's rambly, but
no, it's a good question. It's a big question. It's I don't have all of the answers, you know, like I started meditating in juvenile hall, and I was in and out of that place. And at the end, I was only locked up for about 3 months, and it wasn't such an it wasn't an adult prison. It wasn't such an unsafe environment. It was, you know, mostly I was by myself in my cell, which was sort of ideal for meditating. So it depends on where you know, what kind of situation you end up in if you are in prison. Of course, there are lots and lots of people meditating in prisons. There's lots of meditation groups that go into prisons. You know, it's some work that I've been involved with for decades. So it depends on where you land. And of course, some environments are easier to practice than others, you know, like a lot of prison situations these days are dormitories, you know, or the jails are dormitories. And of course, that's more challenging, where you have to, you know, sit on your bunk or lay down on your bunk, or, but ultimately, so, you know, I don't want to make it sound easy or minimize how scary that is. And, but I do want to say that, of course, you bring the Dharma with you, and you bring the Dharma with you in, like, this is going to be an advanced, very difficult spiritual practice. And, you know, mindfulness of, am I safe? Am I right? All of that stuff, all of the politics that happens. And knowing that actually you'll find your people, you'll probably find a Sangha, you'll find the recovery people. Recovery is strong in most institutions. It's a good clique to be connected with. And you'll find the meditators, and, you know, and you'll, I at one point, and this is sort of an aside, Jordan, but I was doing a lot of work in prisons teaching meditation, and sometimes like I was teaching at San Quentin and some big prisons, and I was also doing some writing. And at one point I thought of a kind of a book plot of, because it's so hard to get in there. Like they make it so difficult to go and volunteer your time. You have to, do all of these trainings. And so I thought of this idea of like a story of a guy who intentionally gets sent to prison as like a bodhisattva, of like, I'm going to go in there so that I can be of service and I can help, alleviate some of the suffering in this hell realm of incarceration. So I'm not saying, just the potential that like, okay, yes, the karma of my actions while I was loaded or whatever is that I might go do some time. And if I go do some time, I can go then in there as a practice of karmic purification and spiritual practice. And like I'm going on retreat. Now I'm going on retreat in a really, wild, wild, loud, not always safe environment. But I'm going on a spiritual journey into this, rather than all of the ways that the mind wants to worst case scenario and resist and create more suffering on top of it.
Yeah, I've gone through many phases accepting this, and the mind definitely wants to catastrophize as much as possible. So it's been very imperative to learn and practice meditation.
Yeah, it can definitely be some level of a retreat, depending on where you are and what it is, but you'll be able to go in there and stay sober and, get so much meditation practice and everything, as I said at the end of this, the Buddha says everything becomes an opportunity, including being incarcerated. Yeah. So I think that is somebody asked a question. Am I planning to keep the meditations exactly as they are if we edit or rewrite the book? Probably not. I think we would probably edit some of the meditations. Like for instance, that is meant to be a 20-minute meditation, and it was about 18 minutes. So, we could actually tighten up the scripts for the guided meditations and add some and edit some. And when we do a second edition of the Refuge book, we'll probably change the meditations a little bit, but they'll be the same ballpark for sure. So that's it for tonight. Next week, we will be continuing the first foundation and moving on to breath and body, page 236. And I said each week we'll just go through one meditation, have some practice together, have some discussion together. Thursdays at 5 Pacific time. So I'll see you guys then. Refuge Recovery is a nonprofit. We do appreciate any generosity, any donations, what we call dana, that you can give. The dana, the link to the donations is in the chat. So if you look in your chat, they posted the link to refugerecovery.org donations. I don't receive any compensation for anything Refuge Recovery related at this point. Maybe at some point I will, but at this point I don't. I do everything out of my own generosity and service, and including teaching this class. So all of the money will go to the nonprofit. So be generous if you can. We need the help and appreciate your generosity. May any goodness that comes from our practice and discussion of the Buddha's Dharma be shared outward in all directions. May we make the path of refuge available to all addicts who are interested. And together may we create a positive change on this planet. And I will see you next week.